Number 6, we look at hygiene production. Hygiene production is everything that happens to a hygiene patient with the exception of the doctor exam. The doctor exam gets credited to the doctor. But everything that happens to the hygiene patient, for example, the x-rays, whether the hygienist takes the x-rays or not, so very often the assistant does, that still counts as hygiene production. And of course, any ancillary services they provide, sealants, for example, fluoride treatment, all of that would count as hygiene production. Number 7, we look at the accounts receivable ratio. Of all the different ways you can measure your collection performance, accounts receivable ratio is the most important. The way to determine that is you take your total accounts receivable, everything that's owed the practice at any moment in time, that would be owed by insurance companies or owed by patients, total accounts receivable. Your software can provide that report and look at the total and divide by your average monthly production. And the goal is to have an accounts receivable ratio of 1.0 or less. Now, if you're quick at math, you'll know that what we're shooting for is to have your total accounts receivable equal to or less than 1 month's average production. So if you have an office that's producing, say, $125 a month, I'm just making up a number, $125,000 a month, then if your accounts receivable is $125,000 or less, then you're doing awesome when it comes to managing your accounts receivable. And of course, as low as it can be. We're all about getting that number as low as possible. I'd love to have the money in your bank instead of on your accounts receivable ledger. Next, number 8, we measure hygiene occupancy rate. That's a term that we've coined. You may not have heard that term. Hygiene occupancy means just like it sounds, like hotel occupancy. What does hotel occupancy mean, Naren?
The percentage of rooms that are, booked, meaning
That are not booked,
filled.
that show up.
Yeah.
That show up every night. So if you have a hotel that has 40 rooms, we'd like an occupancy of 100%. All 40 rooms would be filled. So what are we looking for in hygiene occupancy? We're measuring of the available hygiene appointments in the practice, what percent of those ended with a butt in the seat? And the goal is 92% or above. 92%. And I'm going to state that that goal is very challenging. It's not easy. So if the first time you do this, you look at your hygiene occupancy rate and you realize it's well below 92%, don't beat yourself up. You probably got a lot of company with other listeners, but the goal is over time to get that to 92% or above. Very difficult, but it is achievable. In our client base, Naren, I'm in the middle of doing quarterly KPI dashboard reviews with our clients.
Right.
And it is amazing to see how many of our clients used to be subpar, below 92%. And some of them as low as in the 70s, 78%, 76%. And now they're at 92% or above. I recently did one with a client that the hygiene occupancy rate for the last quarter was 96%. So Naren, if 92% is an A on the report card, what's 96?
A++.
A++. The 9th KPI we measure is whitening procedures per month. And we set a goal of 5 whitening procedures per month. And the reason we set that at 5, just like other criteria, it's likely to be a stretch for most offices. According to the ADA, the average office that offers whitening, not every office offers whitening, but the average number of procedures per month, wait for it, Naren, wait for it, 1.2.
Wow.
Woohoo! Wait, did anyone pick up the sarcasm in my voice? Yeah. So we set it at 5. And I'll share an interesting correlation with you. This is a correlation we learned recently by looking at our client data. If our client hits the whitening goal of 5 or more whitening procedures per month, they have a 98% chance of hitting their total office production goal. How's that for a cool correlation, Naren?
Absolutely. And the other thing I noticed is some of your clients even hit 30 whitening procedures. I mean, they're crushing their production goals.
Oh, it certainly could be a lot more than 5.
Yeah.
But if you're like that average practice doing 1.2 a month, let's start at 5 and keep it going.
Exactly.
But if you're hitting that goal, you now have statistically, you have a 98% chance of receiving your overall production goal. And finally, KPI number 10, something that we do very uniquely is we measure the call conversion percentage. What does call conversion mean? of potential new patients who call your office to make an appointment, what percent end up making an appointment? And the goal is 70% or above, 70% or above. By the way, that 70% is not easy. It's very difficult. But I'm proud to say that in even recent history of going through this with our clients, most of our clients are at 70% or above, which is fantastic. And call conversion is very important because marketing's job, Darren, your job at Equa is to get the phone to ring.
Yes.
Well, now you got the horse to water. Now we got to get the horse to drink. And the way we get the horse to drink is by having a well-trained team that know how to answer the phones, and not just know how to answer the phones, but they know how to answer the question, do you take my insurance? Especially if the caller happens to be calling with a plan that you're out of network with. But we have offices that are completely fee for service and they're seeing conversion percentage 75%, 78%, 82%. Remember, you can be above 70%, but the goal is 70% or more. But we measure that, and measuring our call conversion percentage is very important in your marketing, because if you're not getting enough new patients, it kind of comes down to a couple of variables. Are you getting enough calls? If you're not getting enough calls, that's a marketing problem. And if you're not getting enough calls, schedule a marketing strategy meeting with Naren, with Equa now, because Equa will get you the calls. But now if you're getting the calls, but they're not making appointments, that's an internal training problem with your team. And by the way, if you're not measuring this, doctors, now I'll try to be gentle with it, but I'm not going to sugarcoat it. If you're not measuring what your call conversion is, you have no idea.
Yes.
You have no idea what it is. Same thing, Equa can help you measure what percent of the calls that come in during business hours are not answered. Now, you might say, oh, no, that'll never happen in mine. We get all of the calls during business hours. Naren, what do you find when you put a magnifying glass to it?
Yeah. So for call conversion rate, the average practice only converts 1 out of 3 new patient calls. It's really, really bad. And then same
So
thing
you're
with,
getting the calls, but you're only converting 1 out of 3. That's a 33% conversion rate, which
right.
is an F on the report card.
So one of the things we do for mutual clients, meaning they sign up for Equa for marketing and they work with Gary for coaching. So we help, we can put a call tracking number and we can give the data to Gary's coaching team. And then Gary's coaching team listens to literally 100 calls and helps Gary pick 6 calls that the team can use to kind of improve themselves. So, hey, here is your conversion rate. Here is your missed call percentage. And the missed call percentage A on the report card is 5%, meaning don't miss more than 5% of the calls during office hours. But the average can be 15% missed calls, 20%. That means those people don't even leave a voicemail because you don't answer. They hang up and go to the next person on their Google search result.
Naren, my favorite example, you might remember this one. Favorite example is a mutual client of ours in New Orleans. So
Yes.
by mutual client, I mean, it means they're an Equa client and they were a Thriving Dentist coaching client. And a doctor came to me and he said, a strong solo dentist practice. And this was early in our working relationship. We had just started.
Right.
And he said, Gary, I need more new patients. I'm only seeing 12 new patients a month. He said, I have some money in the budget. Should I spend some money on Google pay-per-click? I've started with Equa, but I know it's going to take a little while to get the the SEO, the organic search engine optimization fully dialed. Should I spend some money on marketing? I said, well, wait a minute. Let's make sure we're solving the right problem. Is the problem you're not getting enough calls? Because that's a marketing problem. Or are you getting the calls, but not converting them? And he said, as I expected, Gary, I have no idea. I said, well, I can get the information from Equa. I'll get it from them and I'll share it with you. Well, he was getting 50 new calls a month and he was converting 25% of those.
Right.
Do the math on that. 25% of 50 is 12. There's just 12 new patients.
Right.
Anything less than 50% is failing. So he was, failing big time. And I asked him, I said, once I shared, well, the problem is conversion. You're not converting them. And I said, how much training time have you done with your team on the phones? And he's got a great sense of humor. He said, altogether? I said, yeah, just round it. Just give me an estimate. He said, let's see, carry the one altogether. That's 0. None. And I said, well, let's do some training with them. They've accomplished some great things. They're very responsive to training. Let's get them trained. You had 2 team members on the phones. So we do a round of training where I go, all that process you described. We pick 6 calls. I pick 4 good ones so I can compliment on good stuff. I pick 2 that need work so we can focus on the things that need work. And we went first round of training from 25% to 62%. Pretty good improvement, but it was still B- on the report card. So we did another round of training, took it from 62 to 69%. And then I got stubborn because 70% or more is an A. It's like, we're right there. I'm not stopping until we get to 70. Did another round and took him to 75%. So now, by the way, he stayed at 75% ever since, which is an A+ on the report card. He gets the same 50 calls a month, but now he's getting 38 new patients a month instead of 12. His goal was 35. So in one fell swoop, just with focus on one KPI, we radically improved his practice. And he didn't have to spend another nickel on that. And never had to spend money on Google pay-per-click because it was a matter of conversion, not getting more calls.
Thank you, Gary. I just wanted to summarize the 10 KPIs and make a request or a suggestion to those listening. Ask yourself, are you crushing these 10 KPIs? And if the answer is no, I recommend you book what we call a coaching strategy meeting with Gary. So the 10 KPIs you should be asking a question is, am I getting 10 or more Google reviews a month minimum? Do I get enough new patients? If not, it's time to switch marketing. The collections, what's my goal? Am I hitting it? Total production, what's my daily goal? Monthly goal, am I hitting it? Doctor production, same thing. Hygiene production, accounts receivables ratio, hygiene occupancy ratio, whitening. Do I have the enough number of new whitening cases? The minimum goal Gary suggested is 5. Then finally, call conversion rate. What percentage of my new patients are booking and showing up for treatment? So if you are not doing well in any of those, I strongly recommend you book a coaching strategy meeting. And the reason I say that is there is a method to Gary's madness or business success. And that is, if these 10 KPIs continue to improve every month, every year, your year is going to be the best year yet. And doesn't matter what happens with the economy, doesn't matter what happens with any challenges you're facing, your business will continue to improve and continue to get better. So the link is lessinsurancedependence.com/CSM.
I'd love the chance to meet you on a Zoom call in that CSM. I get a chance to learn about your practice, and I'll share about our coaching, and we can together determine if our coaching would be a good fit for you. Well, Naren, this has been a lot of fun. Lots of content loaded in this one. As we wrap up today, I simply want to say thank you to all of our listeners. We appreciate each and every one of you. If you haven't scheduled your marketing strategy meeting, I would encourage you to do that. Also, if you haven't scheduled your coaching strategy meeting, would also encourage you to do that. Thanks so much. Naren and I look forward to connecting with you on the next Less Insurance Dependence podcast.